Have you guys ever heard of a queen who fought valiantly against the Roman Empire, who amassed vast armies and battled ferociously, but ultimately failed and was rebuffed, resigned to have her homeland conquered and occupied? Well, Queen Amanierenias is nothing like that. Well, not the last part at least. The first part, she definitely did fight against the Roman Empire, but unlike a certain other person, she won her war. This is in no way meant to downplay or denigrate Queen Boadicea. In fact, I find her life quite fascinating. However, you've got to admit, it's weird that one is a household name and the other barely registers on the radar. Here, I can basically even prove it to you guys. Look, Queen Amanierenias. When you search her up in Google, you only get around 60,000 results. But when you look up Queen Boadicea, you get over 3 million. That's like 70 times the amount you get for Queen Amanierenias, despite the fact that Queen Amanierenias is basically a better and more successful version of Queen Boadicea. And I don't mean this like personality-wise. They had the same objectives, fight against the Roman Empire, but Queen Boadicea died by suicide, while Queen Amanierenias succeeded in her ambition. So ultimately, this video isn't to downplay or marginalize Queen Boadicia's mark on history, but only as a metric to show how underappreciated Queen Amanierenias is in the historical and academic context. In order to fully appreciate Queen Amanierenias, we must first understand what she was actually the queen of. Now, Queen Amanierenias was actually the Kandake of the Kush Empire during its Meroitic dynasty, Meroe being its capital city-state. As such, Meroe was a place where all the legal, administrative, religious, and political affairs were conducted within this dynasty of the Kush Empire. What actually was the Kush Empire? Well, the Kush Empire was an ancient civilization centered around Nubia along the Nile Valley in what is now Egypt and Sudan. It was a pretty rich, powerful, lush empire that lasted all the way from over 1000 BCE to 500 CE, approximately. For context, this is the approximate time that Homer provides in the Iliad about the fall of Troy, all the way down to production of silk making into the Byzantine Empire. With the name of the Kush Empire, it's pretty much a no-brainer to figure out what these guys' main export was. Can you figure it out? That's right. It's gold. Gold, alongside ivory and fine advanced Kush ironworks, were in high demand among the neighboring civilizations, and thus powered the backbone of the entire Kush economy, allowing the empire to flourish as a significant center of trade and commerce across the ancient world. Goods from the Kush region being highly sought after, extensive trade routes were formed that connected Kush to all sorts of far-flung kingdoms. However, not all the people who sought Kush wealth desired to obtain it through trade. Unfortunately, schools do not teach much about the Kush Empire. What little they do teach, if any at all, is that it and Nubia were backwater states of Egypt. This is not even close to being true. The Kush Empire had its distinct language, culture, beliefs, and practices. Not to mention the fact that the Kush Empire straight up conquered Egypt during several dynasties, and that the Kush Empire lasted for hundreds of years after Egypt was ultimately dissolved. And just who was it who dissolved ancient Egypt? The people who had lasted for thousands upon thousands of years? Well, that brings us to sure, you need no introductions to who the Romans were. During the reign of Queen Amanierenias, the Roman Empire was the preeminent world superpower. Under the rule of Augustus, they had controlled a vast territory stretching from the Nile to the Rhine. And now, after solidifying his consulship and head of the Roman Empire, now Caesar Augustus set his eyes on the lush provinces of Nubia. To lead the conquests of Egypt's neighbors, Augustus appointed prefects. The first of these were Gallus and Gallus. Yeah, they're the same name, but different people. The first, Gallus, was actually a moderately successful ruler who managed to inflict some damages to Egypt's neighbors. However, Augustus recalled him in part due to his failures regarding the Kushites, and he ultimately committed suicide. The second Gallus proved to be an even weaker prefect than the first Gallus, and who after several skirmishes past Kush borders, found himself at the hands of an invasion force of 30,000 men led by Queen Amanierenias herself, who managed to capture several Roman towns and quite a sizable number of Roman prisoners. For this failure, the second, Gallus, was ultimately recalled, again because of the failures to pacify the Kushites. Now, the third prefect that Augustus would appoint was Pontonius, who would prove to be Queen Amanierenias' most skillful and ruthless adversary. Petronius immediately set off, trying to recapture the conquered territory taken by Queen Amanierenias in a preemptive strike against the Roman Empire. With skillful precision and maneuvering, he assembled 2 legions of the Roman Empire to fight back the Kushite advance. Petronius' legions and Queen Amanierenias' armies battled ferociously across a series of heavily fortified cities on the banks of the Nile. However, due to his naval backup, Petronius was able to gain the upper hand on the Kushite forces and push them further and further until they were at the Nubian heartland. Here, he was able to attack the city of Napta, which was a royal province and where Queen Amanierenias' own son was located. Despite the ambassadors sent out by Queen Amanierenias, Petronius chose to attack the royal city. Petronius had long realized he would be unable to secure any permanent gains within the Nubian Empire, as they had such fierce resistance, so he chose to raze it to the ground. Seeing the Kushites regroup after he burned down Napata, Pontonius fled back into Roman Egypt. Queen Amanierenias would not take this destruction of her homeland lying down, however. It was only a short while prior when she was the one burning down Roman garrisons instead of having her own cities razed. Seeking to recreate that strength, she amassed an army within 3 years and brought them to the forces of Qasr Ibrahim, a Roman city within miles of the Kush border. Petronius learned of the advance and marched south to defend its borders and fortify it against the incoming forces. It was shaping up to become a legendary clash, and the result of which is unfortunately lost to time. No historical records of the ensuing battle survive to the modern day. However, we can clue in from the Roman response that Queen Amanierenias had inflicted enough damage to the Romans to bring them out to the negotiating table. The 2 empires would then trade ambassadors, and in a sign of respect, Pontonius would deliver these ambassadors to the emperor himself, Augustus, who was currently residing at Samos, a Greek island on the Aegean Sea. It was there that Queen Amanierenias' diplomats hammered out negotiations and what would become a peace treaty between the 2 empires. These terms would be extremely favorable to the Kush Empire, as the Emperor Augustus recalled the tributes and taxes levied against Meroe and withdrew all the Roman forces occupying Nubia. It was a stunning victory for Queen Amanierenias, who went down as one of the few people in human history to face the might of the Roman Empire and win.